today is a little bit different. I want to kind of forewarn you because we're set up a little bit differently. We're organized a little bit. The program's going to be a little bit more different today than is typical for us because we have some guests here. We want to bring in people from the outside of the church as often as possible here to tell us what's going on in the community and give us opportunities to help and serve other areas of the church. So that's kind of a little bit different today. And when our lesson is over, we're going to have our communion, which we do every Sunday here at the mountain. And then after that, we're going to have a dinner. So that's a good thing, too. But we're glad you're here today. I hope you had a great week. It's been a good week for us. Some power outages in Lexington yesterday that were a little scary for a while, but everybody got through it, and that's a good thing. It was calm. That's one thing that Pat and I kept saying. Nobody's blowing their horns. We only heard one person screaming at somebody. I think that was Pat screaming at me. But other than that, everything was pretty good. She didn't do that. Well, this lesson that we're talking about today is just a little bit different. We're looking at the Bible, and if you look at the Bible and read it from a student's perspective, what you find out is the Bible is just a collection of stories about people. And through those stories, we learn and we grow. People like Jesus gives us a great example of what manhood is and what being a human is and being a Christian is. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Mary, Martha, Mary, the mother of Jesus. All these different characters in the Bible that teach us how to live our lives the best we can while we're here on earth. A lot of those folks that are in the Bible are really good people. They give us great examples about how we should live our life as a Christian being. Some of those people that there's stories about in the Bible are not so good. There's some rough characters in there. There's some sin in there. There's some rebellion in there. There's some people that fight against God in their walk with Him. So there's every kind of variety of person from God the Father to Satan himself in the Bible. And between those two people, God the Father and Satan himself, falls people like us. Just normal people. They're just trying to get through life the best we can, do the best we can with what we've got, and not mess up too bad. But the truth of the matter is, all of those people between God and Satan are sinful by nature, it seems. One of the greatest stories in the Bible are those stories about spiritual warfare that teach us that our God is a God of forgiveness, and we need to get a hold of that and grasp a hold of that. But in any type of warfare, whether it's military or it's spiritual, there are fatalities, there are casualties, and from time to time, Satan's temptation gets through our armor and wounds us. For some of us, included even spiritual leaders in our country, and you know who they are, government leaders, you know who they are, they're in the newspaper all the time, fall to adulterous affairs. There are other people that have shameful acts in their public disgrace, even people of prominence in our community, people that we look up to and we respect. On the surface, what we find out is that oftentimes they fall into sin. So the question joins us is, what are we supposed to do with those people? How are we supposed to kind of minister to people like that? And of course, we always look to Jesus for the example of how we're supposed to conduct ourselves. And if we look at Romans in the 5th chapter, in verse number 6 through 10, this is what Jesus says about dealing with people. He says, you see, at just the right time, when you were still powerless, Jesus died for the ungodly. Very rarely will anyone die for a righteous man, though for a good man some might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrated His own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That's how we're supposed to act toward people who are like that. That's how we're supposed to conduct ourselves. We're supposed to give ourselves the most of what we have and the best of what we are to people who are struggling in sin, because that's what Christ did. So what do we do with people that are in rebellion to God, living a sinful nature? What do we do with Christians? How do we conduct ourselves around Christians who fall into sin? Well, unfortunately, the first thing we probably need to get our minds wrapped around is it's going to happen. It happens all the time. Unfortunately, it does. There are very few exceptions to the rule. Everyone stumbles in their walk. Temptation, a lot of times, is like a typhoon. It can sweep even a strong person right off their feet and cause them to stumble. But when it happens to people around us, what do? How do we conduct ourselves? Well, here's the answer to that. We help. We get involved. We stand in the gap. We lock arms with each other. We rally around and we help people in their time of trial to make a difference. So the question becomes, are you ready to do that? Am I ready to do that? Am I ready to stand in the gap? Am I ready to help with those people who are struggling right now in their walk? Am I ready to lock arms with a group of people and make a difference for the kingdom of God, just like Jesus did and just like Jesus told me to do? Well, I know of two people that are. I'm going to ask you guys to come up now, if you would. Ladies, these are friends of mine. I've known Jani for, I think, 15 years. We're on staff at Southland Christian Church. Jani's second in the line. Jani and I were on staff at Southland. We always had desks that were close to each other so we could flip paper wads at each other or whatever. And we've been to Haiti a few times. Grab one over here. I don't want either one of you behind me. I love you both, but I don't trust either one of you that much. Anyway, Jani and I were on staff at Southland together. We were in Haiti a few times together, done ministry. Jani was always one person that I worked mostly with men. Jani worked mostly with women, but sometimes those ministries would cross over. So there were many times that we were in the same room together trying to help couples get through tough times. They've both been involved with Bruised and Refuge for Women, some great ministries that help women in times of trial and times of trouble. Jani, I like to say, I married Jani. And then I like to go on like that's the end of the sentence. But I actually married her and her husband together. So I didn't marry Jani, but I married their husband. Sean, a great guy I was in a Bible study with for many years. Jani's been involved in this ministry, this outreach ministry, for several years. Before that, she was an attorney with the state of Kentucky, married to Sean, has 2 kids. And these ladies are great friends of mine. So I invited them here to tell us about what they're doing in their ministry, in the community, and how they're making a difference. So this is just a little bit different than we've ever done before up here, but it's important that we know what's going on. So I'm going to kind of back up here just a little bit and kind of moderate some questions here. And Jani, I'm going to go to you first. What is the Pythagorean theorem? I told her I was going to ask her that, but yeah, because I don't know what that is either. Tell me about Natalie's sisters.
Natalie's sisters exist to create life-changing opportunities for women in the sex industry. We deal with women that are in clubs, the adult entertainment clubs, and women involved in street-level prostitution. Our goal is to build relationships and to show them love, hope, and support, and lead them to change their lives for Christ.
Okay, great. Jani, who are these women? I mean, it's kind of a broad stroke. Who are these women that you serve?
That we serve?
Mm-hmm.
We serve women from, we've seen girls as young as probably 14 on the street, to 55. And they're, like it says on the brochure, which I just noticed is printed upside down on the inside. Sorry about that, y'all. We have more good brochures we can leave you. These women are just like we are. They're somebody's mother, sister, cousin, daughter. Many of you all may actually know somebody who's involved and don't even know it.
I know when you and I were on a trip once to Haiti, we our outreach there was specifically women working in the brothels in Port-au-Paix. And I remember you told me that every woman that you met, every woman that you interviewed and talked to, you never found one that wanted to be there.
Right.
It was always women, circumstances that life had kind of turned on them. It kind of put them in a position where they were kind of felt like there was nothing else left to do.
That's exactly true. Especially a lot of the girls in the clubs, you will hear them talk like they like their job, and they'll even recruit other women to work and some women on the street will do that as well. And they'll talk big and they'll act like it's it's really good and you're going to make lots of money, but it's just a defense mechanism, and none of them want to be there. And now we see that 95% of the women that we deal with are have a serious substance abuse addiction, many of them heroin. So a lot of, especially the street prostitution, is fueled by the addiction.
So you're not dealing just with bad decisions that people are making. You're dealing with substance abuse issues too.
Substance abuse and women who have been abused or left by their husbands and feel they have no job skills. They feel like they have nothing that they can do.
Well, let's start back at the beginning here. How did Natalie's Sisters get started? Kind of go over the genesis of that.
About 16 years ago, we began, my daughter and another friend of mine that worked at Southland were having lunch, and we decided we wanted to reach out to some of the women in the adult entertainment clubs. That was fueled by the fact that as a single mother, I had actually worked in the clubs for a couple of years, many years ago. And my daughter had worked with a similar ministry in Atlanta. And then our friend had, she was a recovering addict and had also had some experience in the clubs. So we just wanted to reach out to the ladies, and we started taking food. We did that for about 15 years, and there's many stories we can share, not here, but we were very successful. We've been very successful in reaching a lot of women and men through that ministry. And then about 4 years ago, we started, Jenny's my calendar. 4 years ago, we started praying about getting involved, stretching out and reaching more people than just the women in the clubs. We prayed for a year, and it seems like everything we do is kind of a year. I can't think of the word, but for things to happen. And exactly a year later, on January 1st, a woman named Natalie was murdered by her pimp boyfriend over in the Eastland area of Lexington. And when that happened, we got a call from a friend of ours who used to be a manager in one of the clubs and is now out of the clubs and has accepted Christ and is actually one of our strongest prayer warriors. And he wanted to let us know that Natalie, this girl who had been killed, was one of the girls we had served in the clubs who had since moved out and was doing escorting through Craigslist and on the street. So when we found out she was killed, it was kind of like God was saying, you know, prayer is great, but it's time to move. So we met with our security team captain, who's an undercover police officer in Lexington, and he put us on to Ricky Lynn, who's an officer in Lexington who's worked with the ladies downtown. And within 4 hours, we had our first girl that we were working with, and that was 3 years ago.
So this started out as an outreach in the, which I think is funny terms, gentlemen's clubs, but strip clubs. And from there, it grew into, that was basically bringing comfort to people in the strip clubs. And if I could speak for it, because I was involved in it for a while, is to just let people know that they were loved.
Yes.
No matter where they were, no matter what they were doing, there's a God that loves them in spite of all of that.
Right.
And I think sometimes people, especially in sin, view that they're unlovable.
Right.
But there's a God in heaven that loves them in spite of
That's
that.
exactly right.
So you go from Bruised Reed to Refuge for Women, started out, another
Refuge
ministry.
for Women was an offshoot. You and I actually sat in on those first meetings dreaming about that, and then we got, Ked moved into town and felt like that was his calling, so we kind of birthed that out of Southland, and Brad and I served on the board for a while, and then we both stepped back. So it's a separate entity, but it does serve this. We're kind of the front lines, and they are kind of the secondary step. We don't send all our women to we've sent women to the refuge, but we have a lot of different places we work with.
So you can even think of it as we're bringing comfort to the girls in the clubs, just to let them know that they're loved, and a good hot meal, kind of a mom's type meal. Step one. Step two was if any of those girls were kind of throwing up their hands and say, I surrender, I got to get out of this, giving them a refuge for women to hide out in, essentially, get recovery, get healthy, get some education and training, get some spiritual growth there. And then this is for the girls that have made even worse decisions. They're out on the street now. They're truly risking their lives every day. And so this is the next steps. Jenny, how did you get involved in this?
I was thinking, sitting out there, how long it's been. Probably 2.5, 3 years ago, I was working as a prosecutor at the Fayette County Attorney's Office, and I really felt unsettled in my spirit. And God just kept telling me, there's something more I want you to do. I didn't know what that was. So I continued on my journey, knowing that God wanted me to do something else, not quite sure. Tried a couple of other things, but one day I was having a meeting with Officer Lynn that Jani mentioned. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we were talking about a hearing or what it was, but somehow Natalie's sisters came up, and he said, let me get you in contact with Jani. He said, have you heard of Natalie's sisters? It's out of Southland. Well, I was embarrassed to say I hadn't, because I went to Southland. Mm-hmm. So I made a connection with Jani. Basically, I was just trying to connect people with community resources, people that I dealt with in the court system, because in the court system we tell people you're not living your life correctly. You need to be a better parent. You need to be a better spouse, or you need to leave your spouse, but we really don't give people a lot of resources or walk alongside them to do that. So that was a concern for me at that time. So connecting with Jani, who knew of a lot of resources, was wonderful. On the flip side, Jani and her team with Natalie's Sisters and Bruised dealt a lot with women that were involved in the criminal justice system. And they would talk about being on probation or felony, going to court on preliminary hearings, and it's a foreign language to people that don't deal with that every day. So I connected with Jani, and I was able to talk to her and her team about the court system, be a resource for them, and she was a resource for me. And that was basically it. God was still working on me, but I had no idea what that was going to look like. I guess fast forward to June of that year, and I was sitting in church at Southland, and John Weiss was doing a series on heroes of the Bible. And he started talking about Gideon, and Gideon hiding in the wine press, and God calling Gideon to lead an army. And I don't even know when it was in the sermon, but I heard God speak to me and say, you need to quit your job and follow Jani around. No specifics, just follow Jani around, be your stalker, I guess. And I started arguing with God right there. I was like, no way. At that time, I had 2 really little kids, and I have a stepson, and my husband was working full time. We couldn't afford it. It was just crazy. I talked to my husband after church about what God had told me, and he confirmed that I was crazy. But God would not leave me alone. I was in a Bible study with some women. What were we talking about? They chose Gideon. Mm-hmm. Every time I turned around, Gideon. Because I was a very fearful person. I didn't want to take a step of faith. Didn't want to believe that God would provide for my family and God would lead me to what I needed to do. So some plans that I had with my friends about starting a nonprofit really didn't work out. But during that time, I'd been getting up every morning praying, God, where do you want me to serve? Where do you want me to serve? And he said, prostitution. I want you to reach out to women in prostitution. Well, I'd been working with Jani. So throughout the next year, from 1 year, God really started working on my heart, working on my husband's heart, building faith and trust. And so I quit my job in this past June. And God's provided every step of the way. We've never missed a beat. And I've been working with Jani, helping get the legalities in the nonprofit started. Also, it's been a real eye-opener to me. I was a prosecutor for 15 years. I dealt with especially the women on the street that we work with, and I'm ashamed to say that, it's just another case. I, as most people do in the court system, view them as throwaways. There's no point in putting them on probation, sending them to a program, because they're too far gone. Basically, they serve a day or 2 in jail and back out on the street, know them by name, but, it's just get them through the system. So I feel like this is God allowing me a little bit of redemption for things I could have done. but also to educate my former co-workers and other attorneys as well about what we could do. And I remember I've been on ride-alongs for years, and it's not like for me, there's this area of town that I'd never heard of or been to, and I didn't know and see what these women face. So I went on a drop-off where we drop off meals to women out on the street twice a week, and the officer drives us. Officer Lynn drove me. And I sit in the front, and I saw people that I've known, and I cried. He laughed at me a lot, but I just cried because I never saw them as human beings before. And I really think that's how society, everyone that interacts with these women, they don't view them as human beings anymore. Their Johns view them as objects. The court system views them as throwaways. Their own families, have abandoned them or had to turn their back because they couldn't deal with it anymore with tough love. So they have no one. And that's really the beauty of Natalie's Sisters, because Natalie's Sisters is right where Jesus would be. Loving those people that feel that they're unlovable, caring about them, throwing them birthday parties, making sure they have clothes and a meal. And we're getting ready to open up a drop-in center so they just have a place to relax. And we have one woman that just basically been roaming the streets for the last few days. There's no place to go. And then also, we visit them in jail when no one visits them in jail. A team of 2 people go twice or once a week. And when they're sober and they're ready for rehab, we try to facilitate that and get them information and help them make the phone calls. And if they need clothes to go to rehab, we provide clothes. We have to send them out of state. We provide a bus ticket and send them off with a meal. We're really doing what Jesus would be doing. And I know in my experience and talking to some other people, it's really been more of a ministry to me than anybody I've served. It's shown me compassion and how to love unconditionally. I'm still learning. I still have my moments. I have my prosecutor moments. But it's not just, we're not just serving the women. God's using it to heal our hearts as well, because we're all broken.
I think Christianity as a whole, as we read stories in the scriptures and we study Jesus and what he did, the first thing I always like to go is, what about me? Because if I don't change, if I'm not affected by what I learn, if it doesn't touch my heart, then first of all, as a pastor, I'm a poser, because I'm just playing a part. But to each person that's listening to this, as we go through life, I think a lot of people are like you are or were, where you have one foot in the world and one foot in ministry, and you're seeing this going on, but to step out in faith, and I'm sure that must have been an exciting conversation in your home when you went home and told your house, hey, honey, I want to stop being a prosecutor and want to help women off the streets. I'm sure Sean, I know him, that he's probably, okay.
I was very fortunate because, Sean, and there was a time my husband was a manager at Tractor Supply right before I met him. And he wasn't getting to spend time with his son, not being able to serve the Lord like he wanted, and he quit. So at least it wasn't somebody that completely thought I was off the wall. He understood it was just, letting go and trusting God. And I remember sitting at my kitchen table saying, God, how are we going to pay the bills? And he said, I can take this away from you tomorrow. Yeah. Whether, you can say, well, I'm going to quit and provide for myself, but every dime you have, everything in this house, everything you have is given to you by me. And I can take it tomorrow whether you quit your job or not. And that was...
So what are the big areas that you've changed in, that you've noticed Jani has changed?
Faith. I'll worry and feel like, if we need something for Natalie's Sisters or in my family, I've got to provide it. I've got to find a way. And then God will remind me, hey, look what I've done in your life. Look at what you've seen through this ministry. I will provide it when you need it. And we have seen that over and over and over again, that he has always provided what we need when we need it. And compassion. Loving unconditionally. because I have a tendency to want to take my blocks and go home and get mad at people and not try to put myself in their position. So I think those are the two biggest
Personal
areas.
growth.
Yeah.
Jani, how do the average person on the street, a person that's in this room, how can we help? How can we get involved?
There's, there's a lot of different ways to get involved. Anything from collecting items that we will keep on. Sorry, I'm short. It's hard for my legs to dangle. We collect items like feminine hygiene products, shoes. Right now we're collecting warm winter items. Hopefully we won't need those very long. We'll do flip-flops in the summer to keep at the house for girls who need them. So any kind of collection, we can give you lists for that. We're getting ready to hold a yard cleanup day. We don't have a very big yard, but it needs some tender loving care. And we may do some painting on the inside. We definitely will paint the outside as soon as we have enough warm days of the drop-in center. We have a lot of food opportunities where people can provide like a dozen sack lunches, get together with a life group and provide a dozen sack lunches for the ladies. For the club side, we still need ladies who will cook a dish or two and bring it once a month for the clubs. So there's a lot of different ways. We try to kind of keep a running list on we have a Natalie Sisters Facebook page, which is probably listed on your upside down brochure. Sorry about these. And we try to post every day, so we kind of keep things fresh and what's going on.
So can you get, if you have a specific like emergency list, you could get a hold of me and I could bring that up to the church and we could react.
Absolutely.
So some of the needs that you have is going to be physical people, boots on the ground, so to speak, but some of it's just going to be resources.
Right.
And even people with limited resources could help out with, I can imagine a need for diapers.
We don't, because most of our ladies don't have their children.
Shows you what I know.
Yeah.
But for things like you say, for feminine products, toothpaste, toothbrushes, things of this nature.
Exactly.
I can remember some of those kits that we made up for Haiti that we can do.
Yeah.
What about here? Does anybody have any questions or anything that any suggestions? I notice we've got several people in this room from different ministry areas, Celebrate Recovery, and
Can I explain too that we're not a Southland ministry anymore. We used to be under Southland, and in January we began our nonprofit. Jenny's the executive director, and I'm program director, and which is great because we kind of have very different gifts and can play off of each other. But we're no longer under Southland. We're a strategic partner with Southland. But in December, we actually looked at our team leader list. We had 12 team leaders, and 9 of them, we've always wanted it, from talking to me, I've always wanted it to be a very community-based ministry. And God just started moving us that direction. We had 9 out of 12 team members as of December were already folks at other churches. Wow. So it's not a Southland ministry. It's a community-based ministry, and we're working right now to get as many churches involved because we know that that's what God would want us to do. Sorry, I just didn't think we had hit on that.
Any other questions?
Well, I get those pocket Bibles. Like we made a kit up. Right. We could add a Bible into that.
We do have Bibles we'll have them at the drop-in center. We also have them on a what we call our mobile unit, which we can take out to the club. So we always keep a supply of Bibles that would be great. We end up collecting them from anywhere we can.
Well, these are brand new. Get them out of case.
Yeah.
New Testament.
Yeah.
That'd be great. How about rides to recovery meetings? Do you guys need any volunteers for that?
Jenny?
I think there will be a need for that.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we have a couple of ladies in jail that have the list and they're ready to go. But I can see if they can't get a ride to a recovery meeting, that just being enough. So I think that's something that we will need.
Okay.
Thank you for that idea.
We taught on a subject similar to this just a couple of months ago. As a matter of fact, some of the statistics that you have in your brochure, I had that exact same internet resource. But the average age for people entering into the industry of prostitution is 13 and a half years of age.
And that's if they're not trafficked by a parent or a friend. We have a young girl who was pimped out by her grandmother for cigarettes at a young age.
So you look at two, just that one sentence, there's two just horrible figures. One of them is 13 and a half years of age. The other one is, that's the average age. So there's 10, 9, 8-year-olds in that. 70% of people participating in that industry report a history of incest. 85% have been abused in their childhood. 52% were taught through pornography. Porn is used a lot in this area. And the statistics go on are staggering, absolutely staggering. And this is something that is, I don't want to say controllable, but it's healed. I mean, it's the potential there for healing is certainly there.
It's like Jenny said, everybody thinks that they're throwaways, so nobody puts any attention toward that. We're the only group that I'm aware of that's doing anything with this population in Lexington.
And in the talks that I've had with the women in jail, I mean, almost every one of them has been raped or had, pimped out by a relative at a very early age, and they use the drugs to numb themselves so they don't have to think about that. And when they start going through recovery, I mean, they have nightmares, and I mean, it's that they were damaged, and they were damaged at a very young and tender age.
It's not just Lexington. We have, we've worked with women from Nicholasville who were working in Lexington. So we've been down to we visited at the jail here and worked with ladies in your own community.
Well, I know in speaking with county attorney here in Jessamine County and some of the other law officials, they've realized that the system is broken.
Yes.
That we're taking people, we're trying to punish them into recovery and throwing them back on the streets, and it's just not working. So I know in Jessamine County there's a climate right now of it's broken, let's get this fixed, let's do something different. So I think we're at the right time in history. If you go to the scriptures and you look at probably the greatest example of what Jesus taught about this is that whole Samaritan woman. The Samaritan woman was like, or Jesus could have been of a mindset like a lot of us. That's an area that we don't want to go into. It's dangerous. It's people that are unkind to us. That it's an area we need to stay out of. But Jesus said, no, that's an area that we need to go into and be bold in our faith and tell the truth. I think the conversation that Jesus had with that Samaritan woman was one that probably didn't make her feel very comfortable when she was having her sin kind of laid out to her, but he was just bold in his faith.
In a kind way. In a kind way.
In a kind way, in a loving way, and just said, these are the facts. I think a lot of times in Christendom, we avoid the facts or we avoid the truth because we don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to say that this is sin because it might hurt somebody's feelings or it might make them uncomfortable. But, I love Mike Burrow used to say, I'm just in sales. I'm not in management here. I just tell the truth. But Jesus was very kind. And it didn't make any difference to him that she was a Samaritan woman in a group of people that Jews did not hang out with. They didn't socialize with. They had nothing to do with. They were isolated from. He didn't care about that. They needed help, so he was there. He didn't care that she had been married 4 or 5 times, or that she had this history of X, Y, or Z. It didn't make any difference. She was a child of God, and he was there to help. He didn't care about the danger to himself even. I'm sure he was prudent. We saw several times in the teachings of Jesus where he had to take evasive action to protect himself. But I know that you're talking about the police being involved with you and going right along with the police. But even if there's a person that had no arms or no legs, there's a kind word that can be said to someone who's going through a tough time. Jesus loved people where they were. He didn't want them to stay there. He doesn't want me to stay where I am. He wants me to grow. He wants me to be a better man, a better person, a better Christian. But as a church family, this is the front line. This is the front line for the church, and it should be the front line for our church. So,
Lady had a question.
Where are you sitting on the recovery at? Do you have a rehab place?
We do. We have sent people to the refuge. We have a place in Manhattan, Kansas. We have a place in Alabama. We have there's a really great place in Atlanta called the Solomon House, and it's not a long term. It's a 28-day center where they go for intensive assessment, and then at the end of the 3 to 4 weeks, they work with them to help select a long-term rehab. So we really like sending them there. In fact, our long-range goal within a couple of years is to have a Solomon House type ministry in Central Kentucky as well. No, the ones that we work with are basically free.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they're all faith-based, and a lot of faith-based are typically, we have to pay to get them there. Some of them do have some charges, but most of the ones we send to are free of charge.
What about men being involved?
I can always use security for Wednesday nights. I think you've done that before, haven't you? For the club ministry, and we also have some Friday nights once a month that we go out and do the mobile unit. We need people who can drive a trailer and a van pulling a trailer. Cooking. We have a lot of guys that cook. I know you all have guys that cook.
We do.
So,
And we
then
will need
painting and cleaning the yard and all that kind of stuff. We need you.
Yeah, we'll need security for the drop-in if you have any kind of background in
Yeah,
security
yeah.
work in the next few months, probably by
Yeah.
May or June.
I do security at nightclubs.
There you go.
These are Wednesday nighters. And police, if you have any officers, we need officers now to do
Yeah.
security at the drop-in. Right now we're in a soft opening where we have to use officers
Real
at this
police
point.
officers.
Yeah, until we.
Verify, not certified.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Where's your drop-off place?
Drop off as far as if you collect items, or drop off downtown. You talking about when we meet the ladies?
Well, you were talking about you needed some painting done.
Oh, the drop-in. It's down off of North Lime. If you go past the great donut place, North Lime Donuts, which used to be even better donut place, Spalding's was across the street, but it's not anymore. Go down another block or so and turn left on 7th, and then come right up. So it's right there at the corner. It's almost at the corner of 7th and Lime.
Is that near Catholic Action?
A few streets over.
Yeah, but yeah, it's not like within. You wouldn't want to walk it probably, but our girls do.
Across the street from the VFW there.
Yes, almost a couple of houses up.
Any other questions?
Jani, this is a planting seed kind of ministry, correct?
Are you talking about? Do we see life change?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
How much?
We actually, I think, it's very hard. Pat's been involved. It's very hard to qualify. We've seen a lot of lives changed out of the clubs. We've seen a lot of people leave the club, girls and managers. We have 4 or 5 girls were baptized out of one of our life groups last year. A lot of our girls are believers, believe it or not, and they just have been hurt by the church or hurt by a family member that was a member of the church. We have a gentleman who owns one of the clubs that his daughter died of a drug overdose about 2 months ago, and he's been at church every Sunday since. So we're praying hard for him. Says he's ready to get out and change his life, so we'll see. We do see change. It's just, I've told the girls for 16 years, and Pat, when you went through training, you probably heard this, you may never see a life change. It may just be seed planting. We have been so blessed to see differently. God's chosen to let us see a lot of it.
And a lot of times it doesn't happen till way after the fact.
Right.
So there were clubs that I had not been in a year. And someone reached out for that person. I know she had taken us back
Yeah.
and changed her life.
Yeah.
So even though we might not see it
Yeah.
then,
Exactly. And Jenny, weren't you in jail last week? Didn't you go last week when they were all? Tell them about how spiritual you all had a great week.
Yeah, we really did. Every woman that we talked to was really just on fire for Jesus. We hand out Celebrate Recovery Bibles, and those go like hotcakes. We have people that aren't in our program come up and ask us how we can get those. But the 3 women that we talked to this week, they have, one had a CR Bible and was sharing it with one of the new girls that came in. And the new girl that came in said she was really mad at God, and she just basically had a breakdown right there in her pod cell area. And she was with other women that encouraged her, that let her read their Bible and prayed for her, and they've been having prayer meetings, and it was really amazing. And then another woman that really has turned a corner in the last week said that she had had really bad nightmares and been suffering from depression. And in one particular nightmare, she was so scared that she awoke and really unsettled, didn't want to go back to sleep, so she grabbed her Bible and just started reading her Bible, which offered her comfort and peace. And it was just amazing, the stories that we received from these women, and how they're reading the prayers in their Bible and sending them out to family members. And not only is the Bible encouraging them and changing their lives, but they are encouraging other people, and it's spreading. And it was really humbling for God to allow us to see that.
Yeah, those CR Bibles are like gold in jail. We have about a half a case left, so if you ever get them like in bulk and you want to give us some, they love them. Now they can't have, what is it? They can't have paper. They have to have hardback or paper.
Paperback.
They have to have a paperback.
Paperback.
Yeah. I get that confused. And there actually is a jail version of that we've bought before, but they love it. Make some changes.
Okay, let's do this, and then we're going to go into a time for communion here. If I can ask these 2 ladies, just kind of stand right down here in the front, and James and Mike, Ryan, Mike, Frank, if you guys would just come forward, Dennis, just come forward and kind of lay hands on them and pray over them and their ministry, and then we'll move into a time of communion. Mike Matherly, you want to lead that prayer?
Before your throne, dear Lord, we give you glory, we give you praise for what you do in our hearts and change. We're all calling for your glory, we all send it by your grace. We just pray for the women, the ministries. This time you called us over to the comfort zone, Lord, go out go to the world, go to the Samaritan, go to the lost, the humble. Lord, good. I've been there. I know what it's like to go in there and see when people looking for hope and searching and things like that. You take that servant out there, Lord. Show them that light and very hope. So we just pray for each and every one of you out there today, down on the street, Lord, that they would open their hearts to these women. They'll see that light, that they're in that darkness, that they can come to that light. Or we help get nurtured so they can have that hope and that new life again, Lord, and we can be full of joy through Christ Jesus. We ask these things in your holy name, for your will be done. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Okay, thank you. They're going to be around for a while and join dinner with us, so be there to answer any questions for you. We're going to move into a time of communion. We take communion every Sunday here. Scriptures are very clear. When you come together in my name, when you gather in my name, the sacrament of communion is to be partaken. So they're going to be dropping that off around the tables. Jesus was very clear about it. To take that bread, and that bread is a symbol of his broken body, and remember the sacrifice that he made through his broken body and his torn flesh. And also that juice. That juice is a representation of his spilt blood. So remember those 2 things. Anytime you come together with the body of believers. Thank you.
Ever feel left out? Ever feel like you just don't understand? Or that nobody understands you? You ever feel like nobody cares? Come climb the mountain. It's nothing like you've ever seen. Our philosophy is simple. Love God, love people. The Mountain Community and Christian Learning Center. It's faith, it's family, and it's friends. Stroll in, grab a donut, some coffee, and grab a seat. Enjoy the company of a warm, welcoming family of Christ followers as we encourage, support, and worship together. No Sunday's best here. Simply come as you are. Come as your own Father would have you. On Sundays, 9 a.m. is Happy Hour Fellowship with a message from Pastor Brad Allred or a guest speaker starting at 10. If you're looking for a church family or simply looking for a change, stop by and visit. We'd love to have you.